At the moment, all eyes are now on France, where Prime Minister Narendra Modi and US President Donald Trump are set to hold crucial bilateral talks on the sidelines of the G7 summit. The meeting comes at a sensitive time for India-US ties, with trade, energy security and regional stability high on the agenda. The interaction on the sidelines of the G7 summit in WION, which comes after the two leaders briefly exchanged greetings during a gathering of world leaders. Now, attention is shifting to their formal talks, which could begin at any moment now. Trade is expected to dominate the agenda. Both sides are currently negotiating an interim bilateral trade agreement after agreeing on a framework earlier this year. The meeting also comes amid recent strains in ties after attacks on commercial shipping, in which 3 Indian sailors were also killed. Now, at the summit, Prime Minister Modi has emphasized secure maritime routes, global cooperation and the concerns of the global south. The meeting is expected to be one of the most closely watched engagements at this year's G7 summit. It will be held shortly. Well, the picturesque French town of WION may be hosting the G7 summit, but much of the diplomatic buzz today, it definitely revolves around one meeting in particular. This very meeting between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and US President Donald Trump. They are set to sit down for crucial talks on the sidelines of the summit. It will be their first in-person meeting since Washington in February last year, and also comes at a consequential moment, because India and the United States have spent months navigating a complicated phase in their relationship, be it tariff disputes or differences over Trump's claims of mediation following Operation Sindoor. And against that backdrop, today's talks are expected to focus not just on repairing momentum, but also on charting the next chapter of a partnership that both sides see as strategically important. For more, our Assistant Editor of Foreign Affairs, Siddhant Sibal, is joining us on the broadcast from WION in France. Siddhant, what can you tell us about the bilaterals that is set between Prime Minister Modi and US President?
Well, right now, of course, I'm juggling between a lot of things, standing just in front of the bilateral room where the meeting is going to start. It has been a delay of almost 30 minutes now. We've been standing in blistering sun outside, but of course, we were all waiting for the big bilateral between the two leaders, something that is seen as very consequential in many ways, given the fact that this is the first bilateral between the two leaders, in-person bilateral, since February of last year. On the table, there were several issues, whether it is the killing of Indian sailors, whether it's the insulting comments by the American side, focus on the trade aspect as well. Both sides are keen to work on finding a trade pact in terms of finding a resolution in terms of any thorny issues. But as the US Ambassador Sergio Gore has said, the focus is to find convergences. Only 1% of the trade agreement is left to be negotiated, and do expect that it could be completed in next few weeks. Officials from both sides are optimistic about that. But overall, the sense on the ground, perhaps I'll show you first, because we are one of the few channels present on the ground. This is the historic place where the meeting is going to take place in WION, and this is the place. It's looking very mundane, possibly because I'm standing at a location amidst all the security and people around me, a lot of camera persons as well, because this is a meeting that is much awaited. Leaders of the two top democracies meeting together here in France on the sidelines of the G7. In fact, I have a historic parallel. In 2019, the Indian Prime Minister and the US President met at the Biarritz G7 summit in France, and that meeting also came at a time when the relationship had few irritants, but after that meeting, they smoothened out all the irritants. So possibly it looks like, from the ground, I can tell you the sense is that both sides will be hoping to find convergences and make sure that the divergences or the irritants are reduced.
Siddhant, as you said, there are irritants at the moment, especially when we talk about the global dynamics. And previously, Prime Minister Modi also addressed the world leaders. He highlighted one of the irritants, if we may call it, the mistrust between the countries. Do you feel the world leaders are expecting that, and the mood also represents that mistrust in the summit?
When it comes to the mood of the summit here, this summit is happening at a time when there are several major conflicts, and this summit has the shadow of both the Ukraine conflict and the West Asia conflict. We know that when it comes to West Asia, hopes are high that there will be a peace agreement very soon, possibly by this Friday. That's what we know that the Swiss government has announced. But, till the point that it's not signed, there are many ifs and buts as well, but hopefully everyone will be hoping that it will be signed very soon. But trust is of course an important commodity. The Indian Prime Minister's interventions, if I can perhaps briefly sum that up, yesterday when the Indian Prime Minister spoke at the G7, he talked about first, trust but verify. This is a famous quote, a Russian quote used by Ronald Reagan, and of course, Ronald Reagan is someone who Donald Trump looks up to. So that is something that really stood out. But he also highlighted India's concern over West Asia conflict and the safety of the Indian sailors. And secondly, of course, earlier today, the Indian Prime Minister proposed a larger connectivity project and also a larger mobility partnership where India's talent can play an important role in terms of bridging the gap between countries where there are less of manpower resource and countries like India, which has huge manpower resource.
Siddhant, you have been reporting from the spot, and as you said, the room might look mundane from the outside, but the future of US-India ties and diplomacy as a whole, and democracy as well, will be shaped in that room itself. As we're hearing, the talks are delayed in the bilateral meeting. When can we expect the talks at the earliest? What could be possible?
Well, we all are waiting, in fact, patiently waiting in hot sun, hoping that we'll be going inside. I'll just show you again, very mundane, as I said, place, but histories are sometimes written in rooms like these. This is the place where, of course, we'll be going inside very soon, and we will get to hear what both the leaders have to say, possibly a reset, something that could be on the card given the sentiment. Prime Minister Modi and President Donald Trump had several informal conversations. We saw several visuals as well, and of course, body language experts will possibly interpret it better. But it looks like that in next few hours, that relationship could get a new direction in every sense possible.
Of course, Siddhant, it is interesting how the things will unfold eventually. Thank you so much for getting us the latest from the ground right there from France.